Another episode of Get Better Basketball Live is up now. Hi, everyone. This is Coach DeMarco with Get Better Basketball Live. Really excited to have Coach Mark Schruedner of Saugus High School here with me today. We're going to talk about how to attack opponents with the run and jump press. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited, John. This is a lot of fun for me. I've got my little, I don't know if you can see it on the background here, my Get Better Remotely sign. This is my room for the quarantine. And it's obviously it's an unfortunate state of affairs in our country and across the world, really. But you got to make the best of the situation. And so many coaches have been reaching out, and I've been reaching out to other coaches. And I love what you're doing. And we got a lot of great questions today, so should be a good night. Hopefully, people can come away with some learning. And I'm excited to see what people have for follow-up questions and for providing me new ideas.
Absolutely. I'm really excited because, as you know, I love, first of all, talking basketball. You and I have done this many times before, and I love the run and jump press. And, you guys did a really great job with it this year, so I'm excited to see what you have to share with coaches. And I actually put this out there. A lot of coaches have been asking about the run and jump. So I actually put it out in a tweet and asked coaches for some specific questions that they might have about implementing the press, knowing that you and I were going to talk. So I'm actually going to take us through some of those questions and then maybe some follow-ups that I have. But a great question, I think, just to get this started from one of the coaches out there is just how would you go about implementing a run and jump press? You're a new coach, you're new to a team. I know that's not necessarily your scenario. You've been with your team for a few years now, but how would you go about implementing this press?
So the first thing is, if I'm a new coach, I think you always want to start with what do you want your culture to be, and what do you want your relationships to be like with your players? You got to start there. I know it's exciting to be a new coach, and you think about all the X's and O's and developing the system that you've wanted to have, especially if you're taking over your first job. So I'd start there, but past that, if you're new to a system, I've always heard from other coaches, if you're going to get fired or if things aren't going to work out, make sure it's on your terms. So if run and jump is your thing, then right away I would start with run and jump. For me, I made the mistake my first year coaching, and luckily I'm still in the same spot, that the kids, they were in love with playing zone. The previous regime did a lot of zone, and they were comfortable in that system. So I kind of caved to the pressure of them. And I think there's a delicate balance between kind of taking over and getting buy-in. I was watching, I think it was last night, they're replaying the Bulls and Jazz after the whole Last Dance series. And Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan just hit the shot over Russell. He asked the players, do you guys want to delay a game? The Jazz have 5 seconds to win the game. They're down 1 in game 6. And, obviously a lot on the line. Here's Phil Jackson, this coach with all this moxie, already won 5 titles. And he's asking the players for the input with the game on the line. So I think you need buy-in. It's a mark of all good coaches. For us, from the X's and O's standpoint, that kind of came secondary. As we got moving in the season, I would show players different clips and the success outcomes of them and the lack of success. And then I started to ask some questions. I left it more open-ended. What do you guys think of this? And a lot of it was lead in by me in terms of, hey, let's start to trap the blind side instead of having a girl who can see the ball come up and press her. And the kids would buy in that way. So I'd start first of all with that. But past that, if you want to think about developing practice plans, I started in one place, and, if you got a pen down at home, Colleen Dufresne, the last name Dufresne. She's a Canadian coach. She coached at the University of Manitoba. She does a 90-minute YouTube practice with youth girls, I'd say around like age 14, maybe 7th, 8th graders. And the way that she breaks it down, now the drills aren't perfect. Some of them are 3-man weave, which I'm not crazy about. I don't think that's game-like. But the way that she breaks down, it starts with zigzag one-on-one. And the terminology she uses is don't get into her, turn her. Those are just a couple of focuses. She does it once, lets the kids play, and then the second time, she pauses them and offers her feedback. And now the kids do it better the second time. Everything starts with contain the basketball. If you can't contain the basketball one-on-one, you're never going to have the opportunity to trap. You're never going to have the opportunity to run and jump. So I'd start there. She then goes into one-on-two where the defense has the advantage, so that defenses can learn when to go, when to retreat, kind of the communication between who has ball. Then she goes into 3-on-2, again with the defense having the advantage. And the defense has the advantage so that as the offense gambles, as the defense gambles, the offense can't just throw a lollipop pass over the top and they get a layup. There's a defender back there, and that'll prevent that. Finally, she goes to 3-on-3, and that's off of a free throw situation. So the player makes a free throw, and now you're simulating the ball being taken out of bounds. And eventually they go into 5-on-5. But I like the smaller structure of it. It helps players learn the timing of when to go, where to go. And you get a lot of reps that way. And as a coach, it's just not one of those things I think you can teach on a marker board. You have to experience it live and in person. And so that's a big one. The other place I would go if I were a coach is Eddie Andrus. And you can see his stuff on YouTube as well. He has a DVD that you can purchase. But just his stuff on YouTube, he's got some really good small-sided games type of things that you can score, too, as a coach. I know that coaches always want to be competitive. But a big one that he does is 1-on-2. Again, defense having the advantage. So as the offensive player, you've just got to get by them, get a shot off. If you get a shot off, that's a point. You got to go the full length of the court. The other two players, what Coach Andrews says throughout is, don't get into them, show the ref your hands. I love those two terminologies because fouling it's the poison of this defense. If you're fouling, kids aren't going to have very much fun with it, and the offenses, they're going to score a lot of points against you, especially in the fourth quarter.
It's funny because I've never seen Coach Dufresne from the University of Manitoba when I was doing this, but actually that was really big go-to for us. Obviously the 1-on-1, but the 2-on-1 and the 3-on-2, and we actually went up to 4-on-3 and even 5-on-4 before going 5-on-5
Yep.
in that scenario. And having that extra defender obviously does prevent the offense from taking the easy pass. And one of our favorite parts was the 2-on-1, just the trappers learning how to work together, because it's not like a zone press where you're just trapping in that, the coffin corner or different spots and trap spots. You're sometimes trapping out in the open court, and they have to really stay together at the hip and chase down the ball handler. So those are all great drills, and I can attest to those. And I know obviously you're using them. So those are great drills. Are there any other this is another question from a coach, and I think you kind of took us into this a little bit. Are there any other build-up drills? I love the 1-on-1. I love the D-advantage drills. Are there any other drills that you've used successfully or that you've learned from other coaches out there?
Sort of as the season went along, we found that we didn't have to do too much teaching of rotations. The players kind of picked that up. But what we would try to do is we would get ourselves in positions where players were playing 3-on-3. We would just shove the ball in a player's stomach. They were going to be in the middle of the court. And it made everybody think, because we wanted to trap from the blind side. So essentially, if the dribbler was moving right, we wanted the trap to come from where we told the players the back of her jersey or her ponytail. And it made the players think, am I going to be the one that goes this time? You don't know until the play really evolves. So we liked that one. We also would look at film, and if it was a good thing that was happening or a bad thing that was happening, we try to recreate that situation, kind of manufacture that. That's it's not something that you can see maybe in a drill online, but the stuff that in a game that seems to occur again and again, whether it's good or bad. If there are mistakes, you want to figure out what you can do to fix them, and if it's something worth repeating, you want to get the players continuing to reinforce a positive.
A lot to the run and jump press. There's depending on philosophically what you're trying to do with it. So from your perspective, what's the best way to start teaching it? And this is again another question from a coach out there, do you like to use it off makes and missed basket opportunities, or you just do it after a made basket. And I know this is a big question for a lot of coaches with pressure defenses. So I'm interested to hear what you've done with your team.
So I wrote about this, the blog post that I wrote earlier this week. I like to start with 3 things. I think anything more than 3, you're overwhelming players, and you're not going to do those things well. So everything in the first 3 is about controlling the ball. So the first thing we do, which is actually not something that the University of Manitoba coach endorses, but we let the ball in play. So the other team's taking the ball out. We say, let them have that first pass. And I know you're a football guy, and I'm not as well-versed in football as you are, but I look at it like this. If you're a quarterback and you have 4 seconds to make a pass, and you know there's going to be no pass rush, you should be able to complete a pass more times than not. And that's essentially what an inbounder has. You can't take the ball from them. You can't force a jump ball. They don't have that threat. They can just read the floor. So for me, like in years past, kids would gamble on that first pass, and now everybody's out of position. If we let the ball in play, now the other team has to make decisions. The more decisions they have to make over the course of a game, over the course of a possession, the better it is for the defense. But that being said, there's a balance there. We don't want to just let them get it in and give them 20 feet of room. Our goal is, when they get the ball in bounds, for them to have to catch it with their back to their own basket. So that way now they have to turn, they have to face, and sometimes kids aren't even able to do that. And I can show you a clip of that maybe later on if we have some time for it. But that would be the first thing. So let the ball in play, which I know it's an aggressive defense, and that is a not aggressive stance, but it's the only time in this whole principle breakdown where I would say to them, don't be aggressive. Number 2 is we want to contain that basketball. So if I've got somebody on the ball who's slower, I'm going to tell them to give them 6-8 feet of room. We just want to contain it. The floor is long enough where we can eventually get a player, maybe it's right over half court, maybe it's even in the quarter court, but we can eventually get them in a position where they're uncomfortable, somebody's running and jumping, or somebody's trapping from a blind side. And then number 3, it kind of goes in tune with that second rule, but it deserves its own language. We don't want to foul. For all the obvious reasons, putting them in the bonus, you take away your own aggressiveness. But more than anything, I think that players, if they don't foul, they don't realize how easy the game can be. I'm very careful to say don't reach, because we had one player in particular that was a great reacher. And those reach-ins that lead to steals, they're going to be 1-on-0 fast breaks. So you want to be opportunistic with when you reach. As far as the second question, so you asked about, are you a team that presses on, misses, and makes? In general, we only do it on dead balls or makes. But we had a couple of scenarios this year that forced our hand. Number 1 was time and score. You're down 9, 2 minutes to go, that sort of thing. Number 2, we played a team that was bigger than us, and they really wanted to slow the game down. They did a lot of high-low action. They had a 6-footer. Our tallest player was 5'8", and we had a hard time stopping them down low. So we were down about 7 or 8 at the end of the first half. And in the second half, I just said, okay, we're going after them the whole time. The analogy we used for run and jump is we have to be lions. And the lion is in reference to we want to hunt. We don't want to be the team that sits back. And when you're in doubt, lions hunt. Let's just go get some food. So we had success in that game with it. We ended up losing the game by 1 point, so we closed the gap. But in general, I just find that your transition defense principles, they go out the window if you're going to run and jump early. So if a long rebound happens, for instance, now you've got probably 3 kids, if you're sending 3 to the glass, depending on your principles. We send 3 to the glass, 2 back. I know you're a 4 to the glass person. But that ball just went over everybody's head, and the other team's got a fast break. So if we're going to have our 2 backline defenders play up, it's an easy pass over the top, and the other team didn't have to work. I just think the first 7 or 8 seconds of possession are the most common time that teams score. We did practice missed free throws going into run and jump out of there, because I think that's a natural place where you think about the positioning on a missed free throw. You can have your defenders naturally already in front of the offensive players. So we worked on that, and we put the kids, the personnel that we want to be in certain spots. Obviously, we don't have control over who shoots the free throw.
Yeah, coach. And I think you made a couple of great points there too. Just, thinking about your own personnel, and you mentioned how you adjust the person on the inbounder, thinking about them individually. You also made a point about your own personnel and thinking about players that might be a little more aggressive with their hands. And I like how you kind of think about that. And also thinking about, making adjustments based on the other team. And I think that's one of the great things about the run and jump, is that you have those opportunities to put some wrinkles and different things you can do off of it against different opponents. And I have a question about that. I'm going to come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
Just on the point on trapping off a missed shot, kind of to your point about personnel, I mentioned this, you and I talked about this before. I had a team my first couple of years. I had a great person on the ball that was also under the basket for rebounds, and they were great at getting into run and jump off misses. My third year, I took it for granted, and I didn't have the same personnel. And we actually got away from running and jumping off of misses for that reason. And, I wasn't as good at teaching it because this player just naturally was instinctively good at it. And I had to learn how to teach that part of the run and jump if I wanted to use it. So I do think a lot of that does have to do with personnel. Another point that you made about letting the ball inbounds, I really like that, because if you gamble on that first pass out of bounds, and I've seen this happen, you go for the ball, player turns, and they're flying up the court, and now they have numbers against your team. So I do think there's a lot of advantages to letting the ball inbounds, and I also like how you said the player catching with their back turned. Some really good coaching points I think you're giving to coaches here in terms of if they're thinking about using the run and jump. And I like how, you keep it in those 3 points. I think that really simplifies it. So really appreciate that. Just kind of getting to that when the ball comes in bounds. So a question I have for you, philosophically, is there a distance that you think about? So the ball comes in, you want them to have their back turned. Do you try to keep your defender within a certain range? Like for us, I stole this from Shaka Smart, right? The best things you take from other coaches.
Right.
We were always an arm's length away. We tried to keep the player at arm's length. And if we were at a super athletic player, we'd get a little tighter, but we obviously didn't want to bump them with our body and pick up fouls. Do you have any measuring stick for your players? I know some coaches don't do that. It depends. So is there anything that you do in terms of the distance to try to heat up the ball a little bit?
Dick DeVenzio wrote a book, and I'm quoting this book all the time. Our team actually read it as a group 2 seasons ago. And his line was, we want to be in the bubble. So he considers the bubble to be not up in your face, not 8 feet away, but you're in position where if I reach out my hand, she reaches out her hand, we can touch. That's pretty much the bubble. We don't want to get beat, but at the same time, we want to make every dribble worrisome, every pass worrisome. And that allows us to do that. And I keep going back to personnel, but we had a player this year who was, I believe, the fastest sprinter in the 100-meter in our conference in track. So we would always put her as kind of think of her as like a shutdown corner on the team's best dribbler. And we just told her, do whatever you want. Do what you're comfortable with. She was a smart player, and usually she could get up in that player's grill, and that, force the issue for the other team's second best or third best ball handler. And from there, that's when, our less athletic kids had to make a decision. Our biggest point of emphasis was don't get beat. So we would rather be 7 or 8 feet off versus be 1 or 2 feet and then get beat off the dribble, because anything vertical, whether it's a pass or a dribble that you get beat on, it destroys the whole thing.
That's awesome. Great points there, Coach. And just another question, talk about the flexibility of the run and jump. And you spoke to this a little bit about how you might adjust based on personnel of your opponents. Were there some other wrinkles that you added to your version of the run and jump in terms of things you might do with your inbounder differently, or really anything? Are there any wrinkles that you've added to it over the course of this last season?
Well, I don't think this is, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I know a lot of coaches do this, but we'll double. Teams have their preferred ball handler, so we'll double that person sometimes before the ball gets let in play, especially teams that want to go just one up in the backcourt. So we'll really put some pressure on in that situation with the inbounder. And as part of that, we make sure that our back defender is about 4 to 5 feet off. We want to contain everything so that if we can have the person covering the inbound, or we call her the safety. We can have that person face guard the other team's great point guard. Another thing that we needed to do toward the end of this year was teams began to have their point guards take the ball out of bounds because of what we were doing with our safeties. So we even went to the point where once the ball was in play, we had the person covering the point guard deny that pass back based on what other teams were doing. And then the other thing is, if teams were extremely quick, we encourage our players to play 8 feet, 9 feet off. And the reason is players that are quick are used to using that as their strength, and they're not used to being guarded with 8 feet of space in front of them. So they have the awkward decision of, do I sprint when, if I sprint, I'm not going to be able to get by this person, or do I walk it up, which is not in my comfort zone to walk the ball up. And what we found is that those players, they were quick and they were, good enough decision makers where traditionally in the run and jump, we would get beat right away. They'd make one move and they'd split defenders or what have you. Now, because we were playing further off of them, the run and jump was happening later in the play, and we were getting them a lot of times right over half court, which, as we know, creates another line of defense. And we had a lot of success. We played a team our first game of the year this year and gave up 61 points, which for us is a lot of points. It was the most we allowed all year. We ended up losing the game by 19. And the next time we played them, that's when we made the decision that, hey, we're going to play way, way off the ball and wait for them to get just over half court. And if there isn't an opportunity, that's fine. We'll just play our shell defense. They've had to walk the ball up and they're slowed up. It was actually the lowest scoring output that team had all year in that game. We held them to under 30. So we basically cut our point total more than in half with this adjustment. And that's just, again, that goes back to understanding the other team's personnel and what their strengths are and trying to make their other personnel more uncomfortable with decisions, making the point guard give it up to somebody else who isn't traditionally a decision maker outside of the quarter court.
Yeah, those are all great strategies, Coach. We did a little bit of the face guarding, and it's funny, similar. We played a team in our before the end of the season tournament, and then we ended up seeing them in the sectional semifinals. And they did something kind of different that I had not had seen before. They actually took their inbounder and they just sprinted them 100 miles an hour up the middle. It was their fastest player, an okay ball handler, but just fastest player. So they threw the ball in, we're trying to heat up the ball, and they just took that person and flew right down the middle of the floor, right by our inbounder. They hit them, and it was just chaos. And they were so comfortable with this chaos, and they beat us by about 12 or 15 points. So we saw them in the tournament a few weeks later, and we took our person on the ball, and we just backed them up about 3 feet. Yep. So now, similar to what you're talking about with that first game of the year, a little different, but we just backed them up. And, so now they try to sprint by our player, and we just ran with them, and we kept them in front of us. Kind of philosophically very similar to what you do on the inbounds plays. And, we ended up winning the tournament game, I think, by like a point. It was a great team. But that was a huge difference maker for us to kind of add that little wrinkle in, against this specific team. Just thinking about run and jump press. And I get a lot of questions from coaches, and this is another one that I have. And I know that you got a YouTube channel and you have some clips that you're starting to put out there on the run and jump press, some really great stuff. So I'm hopeful that maybe you could pull up a couple of those, and that will go along with some of these questions, I think, as I've seen your clips. The first question is about the run and jump specifically. Is it when you trap or when you jump switch? in front of you, or when you force a speed dribble and you chase and trap behind, or do they both qualify? I guess they're just
The
kind
answer
of
is
looking
yes.
for, yeah, yeah. They're just looking for, how do we define the run and jump press? So maybe you can speak to this a little bit. And I don't know if any of the clips that you have would maybe help give us a visual of what you guys do with your team.
Sure. Eddie Andrews, one of the people that I referenced earlier, he's more of a fan of that switch that you're talking about. This right here, what I'm going to share, this is just a straight up switch. First of all, what dictates it is our players have to make a decision. Because sometimes the issue with this, and I think it's also why it's so tough to prepare for, is that the players are having to make decisions. And there's a lot of ambiguous plays. So for instance, right here, the ball gets inbound. Again, we let it inbound. So you can see we're forcing this player, who's actually a left-handed player, to the left-hand sideline. So that would be an easy adjustment. This is a December game, and you can kind of tell why. But, she goes back to the inbounder here. So the ball's in the middle of the court. So when the ball's going from the side to the middle, that's where we're going to encourage just a straight up run and jump. So you can see she's just crossed over right to left, and the person on the ball is doing exactly what we want. It's nothing heroic, but she's containing. She's in the bubble, like we like to say. And this defender over here is exactly doing what we want her to do. It's awkward for kids because your whole life you're taught, when you play shell defense, see man, see ball. And you can see her eyes are just on the ball, but that's what we want to teach them. She can still feel with her arm where that offensive player is. And I wouldn't mind if she was a few feet over to her left, closer to the ball. But, the offensive player tries to speed up, and right here, boom, our defender has made the decision. And that's the most important thing for players. Again, it's ambiguous. When do you go and where do you go? Well, she saw that the play was sped up, so she ran middle. And now number 12 here, who was heating up the ball, it's her job to now switch with number 4. We're not going to trap in the middle. It's not over half court. It's just too tough of a spot in the gym to trap. So her momentum's already going back to the half court. So now she's going to pick up number 5, and hopefully we don't get called for this foul. We get away with that. And here's the run and jump. This is another one that's going to go middle. You can see the cushion we give. This is a quick player. So we're okay with this cushion. She's having to put dribbles. She's having to make decisions. The key is this defender right here is not letting an easy vertical pass. And, again, we've got all eyes on the ball handler. We'll allow a horizontal pass. So she tries to speed up. It's going right into our run and jump defender. And you see the high hands. So even if 22 was further up in the play, we're still in position where those high hands are going to make that pass, either a lollipop pass, which will allow the original on-ball defender to catch up, or hopefully she gets a deflection, and this defender can pick up the cookie crumb, and now we're off to 2-on-1 or even a 1-on-0. It ends up being just a horizontal pass, doesn't cost us anything. They almost turn it over right there out of bounds.
Coach, can I just ask a question on the players who are away from the ball? I heard you mention that you'd like to see them a little closer. So our rule was, again, it's a VCU thing. We modeled a lot of what we did after them. I've watched a lot of film on what they do. We weren't exactly to a T what VCU was, but philosophically, what's your coaching point for those off-ball defenders? You said you'd like to see them in a little bit more. Do you do it with like steps? Is it an arms? Like, what is it for you? What's your teaching point for those players?
I was talking to the coach at Framingham State because his daughter's actually a middle school student in our program, and his son plays at the high school. And so I saw him at one of the travel games, and I was just going over whatever, I don't even remember. But he said that they do a lot of 5-on-5 full court shell. And so I look at it like that. It's a little bit of a full court shell, but the big point of emphasis for our players off the ball are, number 1, every set of eyes needs to see the ball, because you're going to be in a moment's notice. One of you is going to be running and jumping, leaving your player, and somebody else is going to have to rotate. Somebody else is going to have to take 2. Every every action leads to another action, The second thing is we don't want to ever let up a vertical pass. A vertical pass is just once teams are able to get the ball over with a pass, now they're sending cutters, and things will break down from there because our on-ball defender will, for a moment, they're going to have to turn and sprint, whereas the person who makes the pass is already in position to sprint. There's nothing but negatives. So we're okay with a team making, a Tom Brady to Randy Moss bomb over the top. That's okay. We want our top foot to be ahead of both of their back feet, both of their feet, if that makes sense. So usually you want to say be between the player and the basket. In run and jump, we actually don't hold that philosophy. We're okay with having their player a step in front of us. And if they happen to beat us deep and the point guard or whoever makes a perfect pass, we live with it. But in the majority of the time, teams, A, don't look to exploit that, and B, if they do, it doesn't work out. There's just too many things that have to go right.
And that's the thing I think about the run and jump. When I look at that question, you guys executed what I guess I would call a jump switch. Maybe your terminology is a little different, but someone picked the ball up and someone, they essentially switched the players they were covering. For us, we would jump and we would trap. And even in the middle of the floor, we would get like elastic, as we would say, hip to hip. We might not have trapped that one. It depends. And again, I'm not right or wrong. You're not right or wrong. It's just philosophically, there's a lot of different things. I watched University of Texas Arlington, and they execute very similar to what you do, where Shaka Smart is a little bit more similar to what I do. It's the run and jump. There's just different ways to go about it. And I actually really, really like what you did there, because you slowed that ball handler down and you were able to switch the other player. I think that can really, really be challenging. So now that has me curious about what's your core principle or principles that players know, hey, I should go run and jump this. I should either jump switch or run and trap this, because they might be a little different than what I do, but I actually really, really like what you guys are doing here. So I'm very curious, and I'm sure coaches are that are watching this too.
I'm going to show you right now trapping sideline, and maybe this will answer your question about principles about when to go. So you can see, again, we're containing the ball, and this is that quick defender I was telling you about. She's on the ball, and you can see the offense is plenty comfortable. She's holding the rock, and this player's scrambling. This player's scrambling a little bit. You can sense this is second half that they are, it's decision fatigue is setting in a little bit. So now the ball's on the floor, and she's not out of control. She's not sped up, so we're staying home. And right here, now you can sense, all right, she just did an in-and-out dribble. She's going to cross over. Our cue was when the offense was turned, now we're going after them. So she gets turned, and as soon as she's turned, you see this defender right here coming from behind. That's the cue. We want to trap that blind side. She can't see that second defender coming. And the temptation is for this kid right here to come up and take ball. And that was a painful lesson for us. It took us probably 5 games to learn this isn't going to be profitable, because her natural move, she's going to panic and throw us to this kid. And we just couldn't get the rotation in time. As the blind side, she just, she has to, in order to see this offensive player over here, she has to completely contort her body. And, anybody that's played football, if you're rolling out and you try to throw against the grain, that's usually going to be an interception. So this one they throw out of bounds. Here they go right back to the QB. And again, we have our quick defender on the QB at this point. And you can see number 4, it might be too early, but again, she's decisive. She's making that decision that she wants to go. And because ultimately that play ended up with a throw out of bounds.
When you start out with the run and jump, game 1 to where you are game 20, sometimes players might not go in situations where they go earlier in the year, but I would rather them be more aggressive than hesitant and overthinking it. So I can kind of appreciate there, the point that you make in terms of, the player being decisive and them going for it, because that's an aggressive player right there.
Yep.
Is that something that, you would rather see as well, or?
100%. And a guy that you know pretty well and that's had a ton of success, I think as successful as any coach. I coach in Massachusetts, and he's had more success on the women's side, I think, than just about anybody. And he doesn't have, he's at a public school. There's nothing that's too much to his advantage. That's John McNamara at Pentucket. And he said, I actually had the opportunity to sit down. He invited me to his house, and they've run and jump for probably a decade now. He said his best teams are when kids just say to him, "Coach, just let us go. Stop giving us the instruction. Just let us play." And those are the teams that, they love to play. And so they go on instinct, to answer that question.
Yeah, I have such a tremendous amount of respect for Coach McNamara. I know they've been doing it for years, and they're good at it, and they're tough to play against. And it's always a war when you play against his teams.
Yes.
And defensively, they're good in the half court, and they're good in the full court. I do have a question as we look at this next clip. How do you teach the rotations or your interceptors, those players who are off the ball? We talked a little bit about them having to, the distance they might be away from their person and keeping eyes on the ball.
So the principle that we call it is shooting the gap. And I think actually this isn't even the way that, like you just said, we want to be decisive, where you're going to see a player do something that we actually don't really teach, but it works out. But the main idea is, like I said before, you want everybody's sets of eyes on the basketball, so that once one domino falls, the rest of the dominoes can fall in line. We rotate correctly. And so we shoot the gap right here to get a big steal. You can see it's a pretty close game. Third quarter, it's a 4-point game. And it was a game where I just felt like at halftime, our energy was bad. And we needed a play to spark us. So right here, you can see that I want this defender, I think she's out of position, to come from the blind side. So instead, we don't teach it like this. It's going to be a run and jump like she was coming middle. So now we switch, and now this player is going to take on this girl here. You can see that we're starting to shoot the gap this way. The player that ultimately gets the steal is actually right back here. And again, her eyes are on the play. She's not as worried about the player she's guarding. You can see that the pass is going to come here. We get a little baby deflection right here from number 12. Slows up the speed of the ball. And you can see on airtime, she is sprinting. And number 1 just knows instinctually she's going to now take 2, and 15 is going to rotate over as well. And so we get this loose ball right here. And I cut the clip out there, but we actually end up getting a 3-pointer on that play. This one right here was in the state tournament. Newburyport did a super job actually handling our pressure. And a big part of that was their personnel was just really good. They had great guard play. But right here, you can see we're kind of at a point where we're a little bit more desperate. We're trying to force action a little bit more on them. So we've got 2 players on the ball, and you can see the player right here in the middle is the obvious pass. And that's sort of by design. I mean, we know the distance that ball is going to be thrown. We can pick that off if we jump in time. Whereas if we were fronting it, maybe she never throws it at all. Get that steal there. So those are, it's such an instinctual thing. We don't spend a whole lot of time teaching rotation. We spend most of our time allocated to when do we go to run and jump, or when do we go to trap, and everything else kind of takes place, afterwards. Players can play on instinct, but the most important thing off the ball is those players that are going to initiate the run and jump or the trap, that they time it once that ball is sped up.
So one of the questions that came up, and I appreciate you sharing those video clips. I think that kind of gives us a clear picture of what you guys do. And, so much of the run and jump is that decision-making component, and a lot of that happens in practice. I got a question here, and this comes up a lot. And philosophically, for me, I felt like we weren't the most athletic team. We weren't the least athletic team. We had some good athletes, but I think you mentioned you had a really fast person on the ball, but I think every team, you have a mix of different type of players. I can't recruit like VCU, the best
Yes.
athletes that are going to be great for this press, but I still executed it. And what it looked like my first 2 years with a 6'1" player on the ball, a girl who was so fast, to like having a 5'11" player on the ball that was still fast and athletic, but was a different type of player. It looked different over the course of my 5 years using it with this particular team. But it comes up a lot. Can you press with less athletic teams, or can you press teams who are more athletic than you? And you spoke to this a little bit, but can you give us a little bit more insight on sort of your experience? I know you gave at least one example earlier on, but just maybe a little more perspective on that question.
So I don't think I'm going to say anything earth-shattering initially. If you're a more athletic team than the other team, you should win most of the time, right? Um, and I heard a coach, a college coach who was a pretty good college coach too, say recently that if you're the more athletic team, you should press. Otherwise, you shouldn't. I don't really subscribe to that theory. I think, like I said earlier, if you give space, that lends itself to just essentially eating up shot clock and taking a team that's a very good tempo team out of their comfort zone of playing in tempo. But, obviously, if your athletes aren't as good, you're not going to be as good at run and jump. I do think, though, if it doesn't matter so much as a pack in terms of athletes, I think the most important factor is, do you have one or two kids that can make a point guard's job for the other team really tough? Because if you're making somebody else on their offense make decisions other than the point guard, that other team's going to be uncomfortable running their offense. You're making kids make decisions in places that they don't normally make decisions. That's, to me, is the core essence of run and jump. So if I don't have any athletes that can cover that point guard, it's probably going to be a long year either way. But I'm curious to see how this goes. Last season was the first time that we took the full dive into run and jump, and that was exclusively what we played every game. Team scouted us, and they knew they were going to have to face it. This year, it might be different. We're graduating 6 seniors, and all 6 of them played a significant portion of the minutes. So we're going to have different personnel, but I still believe that our core defense is going to be run and jump, because I really feel like, and I know a lot of people say, well, you have to give up layups when you do run and jump, but the trade-off is worth it. We didn't give up that many layups. I was really surprised. If you're playing off of them, and if you're making that first pass tough, you know what? It's very difficult for a kid to throw a pass, a cross-court pass with 2 defenders in your face to the open offensive player. So I think regardless of, if you're not athletic, I think you can make it work. And beyond that, it's a lot of fun to play run and jump. The kids love it. As a coach, I really enjoy it. And if I sat back in a 2-3 zone, maybe we could hold teams to fewer points some games. But I don't know if it would be as enjoyable.
I'm with you, Coach. I love the run and jump, and I didn't run into that problem either with the layups. I mean, I did it for a bunch of years. And a lot of coaches say, hey, if you're going to press, you're going to give up layups. And if you play at the high school varsity level and the college level or whatever. And I watch college teams that use it. I watch high school teams that use it. And, I don't see that as much for the reason you're saying. If you have 2 defenders in your face with their hands up, it's real tough to throw that ball over the top. And a lot of times, if they're going for those passes, it's going to end up in a lot of turnovers for us and, our team going the other way. So kind of piggyback, another coach asked this, kind of piggybacking off that. Another question is there any team that you would not use the run and jump with? And I started to kind of think about that, and teams that might not be as fast, but they're cerebral and they can really, think ahead. I really think they can be effective against teams that might be quicker than them. We played teams that were quicker than us, and we had some of our best success because they thought, we're just going to fly down the court and we're going to go by them. And all of a sudden, they end up in a trap spot and 2 players are on them. So philosophically, do you feel like there's teams that you wouldn't use the run and jump with, or, are you kind of all in on it at this point?
I think you modify it against certain teams. I worry about great point guards. players that are both excellent at dribbling. They use the hesitation dribble well. They can manipulate defenders, by changing speeds. Because like I said, our cue to go is as soon as an offensive player is sped up. So if a player goes from taking one speed dribble and now all of a sudden our player leaves to run and jump and they still have that dribble, but they're under control now, those are players that you worry about. But I think against something like that, it might be that you mix in a zone press. But like you said, I am all in on it. And for those players, if it's a matter of face guarding with the inbounder or, even leaving their second primary ball handler wide open and just daring her to bring up the ball and initiate the offense, we're putting ourselves in a little bit better position to defend in the half court now.
Yeah, that's a great point, Coach. And I have another question from a coach here. This is the last one, and I do appreciate your time. I may have a follow-up question or two for you if you have a couple
Absolutely.
more minutes. But this is a great question, actually. Do you end up forcing the ball handler a certain direction? And then they also kind of asked, you just trap on a call. So I know you kind of spoke to the decision-making in that. But the first part, do you force ball handlers in a certain direction? And I'm curious what your take is on this.
So ideally, the main premise that we talked about with the kids on day one of teaching run and jump is just get them to turn. If a kid starts with their left hand dribbling, that means they're going to be turning onto their strong hand. So believe it or not, we almost want to encourage the players to go right, so that way when we make them turn, they're now using their weak hand when they have to make their decision, because that's when we're sending our second defender, hopefully from the blind side. So believe it or not, we're encouraging them to go to their strong hand, which does two things. A player will think to themselves, oh, you're giving me my strong hand, I'll beat you then. Hey, we're saying I dare you to dribble, and they're taking us up on it. And then the second thing is, hopefully if we're quick enough and we beat them to the spot, now they're turning where they're using their weak hand. And just a quick point on the call, we don't give a call. It's very much the players are spontaneous, and that's part of what makes it difficult to teach. But I know in the video that I referenced, the Colleen Dufresne video, the players say go, and we do teach that in small-sided games. So if it's a natural run and jump where it's in the middle of the floor and it's just a switch, we'll say go so that the on-ball defender knows. In a game, and I hear, and I'm sure you do too, coaches always say players do not communicate enough. And it's true, but I think it's a tall ask of players in the heat of the action to communicate. I want players to communicate on dead balls. I want them to communicate if the ball is being held by a player. But I think in the action, it's too hard to ask players to have a call. And as a coach, I almost want the offense to be surprised to see our second player arrive. I don't want to be yelling trap, 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 because now that player knows I got to get rid of the rock.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And when you start making those calls, then I think you start overcoaching a little bit too. So I'm in the same boat as you. Like when I'm using the run and jump, it's really authentic and it's really about the players. And I really love the point that you made about actually, the run and jump is really as effective as teams being willing to put the ball on the floor. You get teams that, and I saw this, played a great team in the state tournament, and they had worked very hard on not putting the ball on the floor, like really passing, cutting, and really trying to avoid that part of it. And, we still got them to do it a little bit. But when you invite players to their strong hand, I have to think there's a higher likelihood that they're going to put the ball on the floor. So you're kind of baiting them to do exactly what we want to see in a run and jump press, which is, hey, go ahead, put the ball on the floor, put it to your strong hand. And then, like you said, you're turning them to your weak hand. So that's a great coaching point. That's not something I had really thought about in terms of doing it. We actually would force to the weak side a little bit more, and that was kind of defensively what we did. But I actually like what you're saying about forcing them to that strong hand, because they're going to put the ball on the floor. And did you find that, when you were doing that, some really great ball handlers, they were kind of starting out to their strong hand, and you were turning them and getting some good traps out of it?
Regardless if it was right, left, or whatever, if an offensive player was having to take 3 or more dribbles, we were going to have a lot of success. The more dribbles we could take, as long as we contain them, we were going to have success, whether they're going right or left. But, if we had our way of our perfect world, then we'd force them right so that way they would come back to their left.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I do like that coaching point. And just thinking about the analytics, I know you put out a great blog recently, and I believe I shared it out on Twitter as well, but about the run and jump press. And you share a lot of great stuff on your basketball growth mindset, through Twitter, but also through your blog posts. You've talked to a lot of different college and high school coaches, just tons of knowledge I feel like you get. And I appreciate you referencing some of either the videos you've seen and also, coaches maybe you've talked to like John McNamara, who's just a wealth of knowledge and a great resource. But thinking about the analytics, you spoke to this a little bit in your blog. You guys actually had more success with analytics this year, statistically, going to the run and jump press. And I know sometimes there's criticism about pressure defenses and, might give up more points per game. Or could you talk a little bit about the analytics and some of the things like the positives that you saw from the run and jump this year?
So the other thing in addition to the analytics, and it's tough if you're not, coaching the personnel that I'm coaching, but we lost our point guard from 2 seasons ago who had 400 career steals, 100 steals a season, so 5 steals a game. And she played in college this year, and I think she was second in her college conference in steals as a freshman. So she was elite level steals, and yet our turnover percentage didn't change after she departed. So we didn't do run and jump when she was with us because I was an idiot. And she left, and our turnover percentage stayed the same. And I think something that kind of gets hidden in that is that because we're working for a minimum of 20 minutes a day on our run and jump defense, our offensive decision-making improved as a result. I don't know if any coaches out there know Chris Oliver. I'm sure a lot of them do. And Chris Oliver is a big fan of increase the number of decisions that players have to make and get rid of these drills that aren't game-like. Well, our run and jump press made our offense make a lot more decisions. It made our practices more game-like. And our offensive turnover percentage went way down from the year prior. And I think that was partially related to the fact that we were having to play against our defense every day. So kids got better through that avenue. But in addition to that, we stopped playing zone almost entirely this year, which led to better positioning on rebounds. We rebounded the ball more effectively this year than we ever have. And our effective field goal percentage margin was better. I think that's attributed to 2 things. Number one, when we did play in the quarter court, people were able to get out and close out on shooters. And on the offensive end, we were able to get a lot of easy shots as a result of turnovers that we forced that led to 2-on-1s, 1-on-0s, and obviously you're going to make those layups.
That's a good point on using a pressure defense in practice and how it helps your offensive decision making. I think one of the toughest things to do is to play against a really quality pressure defense, and if you're doing it every day in practice, it has to help. And certainly you saw some of the advantages. Last question, because you and I could be here. We could be here all night talking, Coach. All right. I love talking hoops with you, and I hope we can do this again. And I can keep going, but I'm going to make this the last question. You talked about Chris Oliver. You talked about sort of the games-based or decision-making based approach. So is there a small-sided game that you use specifically for the run and jump, or one that helps you with the run and jump press? And if so, would you be willing to share that with all the coaches today?
So, it's not a rocket science thing, but the player's favorite drill is what we call 4-minute wars. And it's just a glorified scrimmage. But what we'll do is a lot of times I'll be the ref. I don't say a word. The assistant coaches might coach one team, but a lot of times the players will just be purely in charge. You guys get 1 timeout. It's the first quarter. It's the second quarter. It might be the fourth quarter. And so we're teaching situational stuff. We're also teaching, last shot, 2-for-1s, which was a huge thing for us this year. In the past, I've kind of held the philosophy of I don't want to have the kids turn the ball over by holding the ball for 20 seconds. This year we did that drill enough where we got confident with, those situations of getting the last shot. But by playing these 4-minute wars, players naturally put themselves in position where they might make a basket and then call a timeout immediately after. And they would do that on their own to set up the press. And I think what it does is, like, you can work on, all right, 5-on-5, take the ball out, 5-on-5, take the ball out again and again. And players are going to do that well. But I think when they have to go through the process of, oh, we just made a basket, it's not a time to high-five my teammate and sprint back on defense. It's time to focus in on what exactly I need to do. And so they got used to scoring baskets in the natural course of action in the game and then transferring right into defense from there. You could see the benefits within those 4-minute scrimmages of players loving run and jump because they would get a basket, get a steal, and then get another basket. And a 4-hour run could just happen at any particular time. So we might be in a tough game, third quarter, where we just weren't scoring that night. We're down 7, fourth quarter. But kids just know all we need is one basket, and then we get to play defense. And it was kind of a flip of the reaction of what you're used to seeing in youth basketball, where everyone wants to score, they want to shoot. And in a way, the kids became, like us coaches who sometimes, I'm trying to balance offense and defense, but I guess if I had to classify myself, I'd say I'm more of a defensive coach. And it was just good to see them take on that personality of, I want to play defense.
Yeah, I'm from the same philosophy, coach, and I love defense, and even attributing, when you score on offense, we used to do some half-court, small-sided games, and you score on offense, you got to go play defense, and defense was where you earn your points. Every stop was a point, every steal was a point. So we used to really encourage defense. I think you and I have some similar thoughts on that, and obviously the run and jump press. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us game footage, drills, answer questions from coaches on Twitter. I hope we can do this again. And, I feel like there's so much we could talk about with the run and jump and also some of the other great things you're doing over there in Saugus. And hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe during this challenging time. No, it's not easy for anybody.
John, thank you. I can't thank you enough for the work that you do on Twitter. I love what you do. Spreading the knowledge of the game and the questions you ask and just the way that you facilitate conversation is unbelievable. And the followers that you had, the questions that they asked today, first of all, for you to get 8 or 9 questions from your followers is incredible. It shows the kind of the value that people find in it. But I really like the questions. It pressed me into thinking, and I would love to do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Coach. Have a great night, and we'll talk again soon.
You too. Stay safe, John.